All right.
Hey, everybody on YouTube Live and Zoom. We're just getting all set up, getting started now. We'll be ready to go in about 30 seconds. I just want to welcome everybody in.
Oh, wait, am I on mute? I am not on mute, sorry.
Jen, you're gonna be the musical performance before we start here.
Wow.
Sing us a tune.
It's like, please stand by while you listen to this music. It's like an elevator music, you know.
Okay, just want to welcome everybody into the USA Hockey webinar series presented by Pure Hockey and BioSteel. We're really excited to have a bunch of great guests on today with our ADM manager for goaltending, Steve Thompson. Just remember, if you have any questions, put it in the Q&A box for us on Zoom. And if you're on YouTube, just put it on the live chat and I'll be watching both. And Steve and goalie/athletes, the show is all yours. Really excited to hear what you all have to say.
Awesome, Dave. Thanks for having us. And everybody, thanks for joining us today. We wanted to do something special for everyone as we're heading into the weekend and have the first day of May right here. And we've had some excellent educational webinars over the past month with some of the NHL goalie coaches and professionals in medicine and sport and all kinds of great talks. And what we wanted to do today was fill that void of the hockey talk, which is something I know we're all missing deeply by being at home and not being able to get back into the locker room. And so we thought, what better hockey talk than to have some of our best American goalies that have all represented our country and won us gold medals on the biggest stage, just to talk hockey, just to talk goaltending and really get to share why we chose to play goal, some of the great experiences that everybody's had winning a gold medal, and more than anything, just talking hockey, having fun. So with us today, we're really excited that from the Miracle on Ice in 1980, we have Jim Craig and Steve Janicek. From the 2018 Women's Ice Hockey Olympic Championship team, we have Nicole Hensley, Alex Cavallini, and Maddie Rooney. And then from the 2018-2014 Sled Goaltending Gold, we have Jen Lee. And then our most decorated goaltender on the call, we have three-time Olympic gold medalist from 2010, 2014, and 2018, Steve Money Cash. So everybody, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What we wanted to start with today is, you know, a big reason why probably all of us played goalie in the first place, which is the equipment and how cool it is. And everybody saw their first goalie who had the cool set of pads and the mask with the paint job and all the things that just make goaltending so unique. But what's cool about the panel we have today is that the equipment's a little bit different depending on the era you played the position and also the discipline of goaltending that you're in. So I wanted to start today just with talking about the pads and then one of the coolest parts of goaltending. So if Jim and Steve, we'll start with you two. Jim, if you want to start just talking about the goalie gear, like how do you get started into playing goal and what the equipment was like for you back in the 1980 Miracle on Ice?
Well, the equipment back when I played was the best it was at that time, but it's made a lot of enhancements. I think the goalie gear, when Steve and I played, it wasn't a focal point. You know, I think maybe the hockey sticks and the skates were. And then unfortunately, after we played, they started paying attention to protection. When Steve and I played, you didn't let it hit you because it really hurt, you know. And I can tell you a funny story. When I first turned pro with the Bruins, Jerry Cheevers, who was my idol growing up, and I loved all the stitches he had on his mask because it was really cool. And so my trademark was always the shamrock for luck. But I remember him saying to me, Jimmy, you know, if we're up like 4-1 and that puck's coming near your shoulder, just get out of the way. It hurts, you know. So it's a little different than it is today.
Fantastic. Steve, do you have any other similar stories when you started?
I think that, you know, that the Shamrock, I had a little Minnesota golfer printed on my forehead, one of my masks early on at the University of Minnesota, and I had to switch masks. It just was a nice little target for guys during practice. So,
Steve,
you know,
tell them the story about the puck shooting machine.
well, you know, yeah, when we were together on the Olympic team, we had a puck shooting machine that we used at the University of Minnesota. Warren Strelo, the goalie coach, this was his pride and joy. It was his favorite toy. And of course, I had used it for years and knew how to do it. So showing Jimmy had never used one before. And we were at practice in 1979. Jimmy and Warren are standing out there by the puck shooting machine, and he's shooting pucks, and I'm making great save after great save, which you could do because you really didn't even have to look at the puck, right? You heard the puck fall into the chute, and then as long as you had the kind of the speed down, you could just move your glove and didn't even have to look. So those two are out jawboning. I don't know, what were you talking about? It's
So I went in there and I took the first shot, and it felt like a cannonball was shot at me. So I quickly got out of the goal after it knocked my stick out of my hand. And I said, I'm not going back in there. And so he, meaning Warren, was going to Herb and saying, hey, listen, we have a problem with Jim. He won't go back in the goal. And so Herb brought me over beside, and he said, now just watch Steve and, relax, it'll be fine. And Steve, why don't you take it from here?
well, and Warren, you can adjust the speed and you can adjust the height where the puck's coming in. So Warren is turning up the speed gradually and kind of moving it around and adjusting the height. And we're there a couple minutes into this, and I hear the puck go thump into the chute, and bang, I get it right between the eyes. Just totally didn't knock me out, but it knocked me flat on my behind. And I just remember laying there, kind of looking up, and there's Jimmy just shaking his head, skating off the ice.
Awesome.
I don't think you ever used it, did you?
No, Herb said, Jimmy, after they went and stitched Steve up, he says, no, I don't think you have to use that machine anymore.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
The equipment's changed. The training has changed. The athletes have got better. So it's been really fun to see the progression. And I think one thing Steve and I are really proud of is the fact that we don't live in the past and say what we didn't have. We remember at the time we had the actual best equipment available and the best coaching, and that everybody that's on this panel has been a pioneer to help each one of these viewers to have something better with its training or its equipment, or it's just the mental part of the game. So it's been awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
One thing you spoke to, and it's pretty unique in goaltending, is the mask itself, and how we all get the opportunity to kind of put ourselves on our equipment. And you'd mentioned the clover for yourself, and Cheevers had the stitches. Alex, I know that you just had a new paint job and got a brand new set of equipment recently. Do you mind sharing with the group what your mask is like and what you drew to?
Yeah, I mean, that to me was one of the most exciting pieces of equipment that I got. I'll never forget when I got my first goalie mask when I was probably 9 years old. And I was so excited to open it up on Christmas morning. But yeah, so recently I just got a new set of gear and, work closely with the artist to design the mask. And the last couple masks I've had for Team USA have been pretty intricate with, a lot of design that goes into it. And my last mask, I was like, I want it simple. I want it old school. I kept my pads super clean. So it's just very clean lines. And I was really excited about it. And so for me, usually the personal part that I do for the mask is on my back plate. So that's where I add in, I have my grandpa's on it who passed away, and my mom's a breast cancer survivor. So I have that pink ribbon on there. And so I always try to make that more personal, but it's always exciting whenever you can get a new set of gear and design new equipment, because that's one thing that the players don't have on us.
Exactly. That's awesome. Steve and Jen, your guys' equipment's a little bit different in different ways. Do you mind explaining to the group, how different is the Sled goaltending equipment, and also what's similar? What can you customize?
Yeah, it's funny. Jim had mentioned that while it seemed like what they had was nothing, but it was the best at the time. When I first started playing hockey, I got into it through in my backyard. My brothers would strap pillows and newspapers to me and shoot pucks at me as hard as they could. So I guess in my own way, I kind of followed in Jim and Steve's footsteps back then. Didn't know it, but our equipment is very different for those that haven't seen it. At first glance, it kind of looks like a barbarian's tool to go to war. We have on the glove hand, we basically adhere a track spike to the back of the glove. So we're able to pick and move ourselves along the ice. And then the sticks have their own picks that we had fixed to them that allows us to dig in as well. And then the difference that we have is, since our legs are taken away, we're sitting in the sled. Most of our gear is upper body, but If you want to, you can choose to wear a leg pad, depending on your stance and your style. But the biggest difference in the way it's changed since I first started is the sleds used to be about 20 to 25 pounds. I mean, imagine taking a 25-pound dumbbell, you can lift it over your head barely. Imagine trying to sit in that, something that weighs that much, and scoot yourself along the ice and still try to make a save. Good luck.
Hey, Steve, our pads used to weigh that much.
So I have respect for you even more now.
Right, Jenny? Those deer hair,
Yeah, deer hair,
wet,
hair stuffed. I mean, you'd get 20 pounds of water easy over the course of a game.
And it would take you like a good half a season to break them in, and you would hope by the end of the year that it wasn't broken in so much that it didn't hurt you. So it was a balancing act. You might pull out your old ones for some practice just so you didn't have to break in a new pair.
Yeah, and just to follow up with that a little bit, so we also have the options in our position where when I started, because I kind of was watching everyone that was playing before me, like Stevie, for example, he wears shin guards instead, so he doesn't even have a leg pad to cover the lower side of it. So that's even tougher. And Greg and I play that style as well, but I just didn't have that like quickness like Steve does. So I changed it to a leg pad. But I remember even starting. I don't know if you remember that, Money Steve. I started with the inline kind of roller blade, like a leg pad. And they were just looking at me like, what are you doing with this? I'm like, well, it's, helping stopping the puck, I guess, in that way.
Awesome.
Oh,
How about with the picks? Do you guys ever get run into with like the picks on the players' sticks? And like same thing with your own? Do you ever get caught up in your gear?
There are certain teams out there where they like to use their picks in ways they're not supposed to. But it's supposed to be a call as far as picking goes, but the refs don't typically see it just because, you're in close quarters. But I haven't used my picks probably since I played stand-up hockey, because, guys weren't used to getting picks, so they're not going to call me for it. So I would do it, but I don't use them as weapons. And, I make sure you got to make sure that you're keeping your stick down in our sport, just like you guys do in your discipline.
But if you have to scrap though for a few times, just like Steve described earlier, like there's like spikes in the back of your head. Yeah, you're definitely gonna use a couple of this to get him out of the crease. You know what I mean? So.
Not I, never.
Oh, not Steve. No, Steve. No, just
Never happens.
So Jim, another point that you brought up that I find really interesting is the evolution of goalie coaching and coaching specifically. And you brought up Warren Strelo, who is a legend in U.S. hockey. He's the person that we name all of our development camps in the summer after now. And I believe he was the first ever NHL goalie coach based upon the success that you three had in the Olympics and building from there. Do you mind talking about the changes that you've seen over time with the goalie coaching specifically?
Yeah, it's become a full-time job, and it used to be, just leave them alone and don't bother them. And none of the practices, so if you think of a baseball picture, when they have batting practice, they throw the ball and they tell them where it's going and they practice hitting it to a different area. We were in survival mode. Nobody had a drill that was set up for a goalie. And so Warren was really quite instrumental at creating the position and understanding. I talk about it all the time now is they judge a goalie by how many shots on goal and save percentage. And there are so many other techniques in this game that a goalie does, like perfect positioning so the person won't shoot it, or such great positioning that they don't hit the net, or such good puck control that they don't give up rebounds. And so I happen to think right now the sport is so backwards in its analytics on goaltending. They could do so much more with it. And, Warren was a pioneer. I knew Warren just in the Olympic Games, and the NHL was so archaic back there that when I got into the NHL, you couldn't even talk to him and get any advice because he would have lost his job for speaking, So the sport has changed from just a sport to entertainment where they've really done a great job. But Steve knows Warren a lot better than I do. Steve grew up basically with Warren helping him.
I did, and he was way ahead of his time. I mean, as Jimmy mentioned, it was all about positioning, all about making sure that you would do the routine moves that you would do in a game over and over and over again. So it was just pure muscle memory. There was an aspect, as Jimmy mentioned. I mean, Herbie in particular, I don't think really dealt with his goaltenders very well. So in a sense, Warren was the goalie whisperer, and kind of the guy who would make your case to the coach and make the coach's case to you. I think that was a big part of his job at the time, in addition to all the physical stuff.
But Steve, one thing he did that was better than any coach I've ever seen today is he didn't try to influence you on a style of play. I was more of an athletic goalie. He let me be athletic. And, some people are totally different. So now you've got these goaltending coaches that are trying to make a living, so you watch the NHL, and the Finnish or the European influence has been there, where all of a sudden they're not utilizing their teammates and they're responsible for so much more. Nobody tilts their stick and puts the puck out of the net. It's purely block, block, block. They don't catch it when they could. There's a lot of learning that could be done from the past as well as the present. And Warren reinvented himself year after year after year, because he was a student of the game and the position, but not only that, of his individual student. And so I really think what made Warren Strail incredible was his ability to utilize the person's own natural abilities, whether it was intelligence or athleticism or whatever that was. And I think today's game has gone into, it's like a formula. This is what you do. If you're going to be a goalie and you're going to play in the NHL, you're going to be 6'4", because when you go on your knees, your shoulders are going to cover the crossbar. Well, Maddie made sure that wasn't true when she played, because, athleticism and so much more than that. So I think if Warren Strail was alive today, there'd be different analytics. He would have a much better influence. He never was he was a teacher. He wasn't a guy that wanted to make money. He was a guy that didn't even know how to make money. He was just a teacher that had a student that was his pupil and made that student as best he possibly could. And there's not many of them out there.
No, and I will just toss in, guys, understand when Jimmy's saying that there was a lot of natural talent there for him to work with. And to his credit, he did have different relationships with different guys. I still wake up in the middle of the night hearing, "Don't leave your feet." Good God, don't leave your feet. So, there was a difference in raw material that he was working with, even just on our team.
And Jimmy,
he would challenge you to think, right? And then you were empowered to speak to him. And I think what happens now, it's almost like in business that everybody wants a life coach. They want everybody to tell them what they're doing is okay and reinforce this habit over and over. But nobody involves when that happens, right? The best person that's going to help you from being scored against is the person scoring against you. And, every time somebody would score a goal against me, I'd say, "What do you see? What happened?" And they would tell me. And I think what happens is this position today has become so technical and so unathletic in so many ways that it becomes the equipment blocking the puck. And I love to see the change that's happening, because you see goalies now really handling a puck, being a big part of the defense, being a big part of getting the puck out of the zone. And I look for more of these former players to have bigger influences, especially the women on this call. They can influence your sport and have a voice.
And to that point, you brought up a really interesting topic with Maddie. And Maddie, I know you and I have talked about this in the past, but one of the things I've been most impressed with working with you and watching you play is that you don't play the conventional way that most goalie coaches these days ask of you. And I know you've actually had times in the past where goalie coaches are telling you to play a certain way. And it's really funny to see, not funny, but it's something we need to talk about to the large audiences. There's been times when you're in practice, there's a breakaway, you stay on your feet, the puck doesn't go in the net, And some people are thinking, she's not even trying. Why didn't she go down? And we're going, well, did the puck go in the net? And they're like, no, but still, like, why didn't she go down? And so what have you used as strategies to stay true to yourself, understand how you play the game, and not get torn by the noise?
Yeah, to talk about what Jim was saying too about my height, Nick knows this too. We're both about 5'5", 5'6", 5'7", but you don't have to be 6'4" to be a good goaltender. I mean, I think you just make up for it in other ways. I like to think that I use my athleticism and quickness in order to make up for my size. But yeah, and then regarding the unconventional style of play, I don't really know why I choose to make the saves I do in the moment. But like in practices, Nick and Riggs will always call me out for like throwing a random deck save here and there. But yeah, I just like to have fun with it, find new ways to stop the pucks. I mean, I don't think I try to stay away from getting in my head about the technical side of the game and just keep the puck out of the net. Like that's our goal for all of us here.
Steve, I've got a question for all the goalies here, right? In goal, it's not, you can't make something happen. You have to wait and react that something has happened. So I used to do a drill with all these young goalies, and I used to make them stand on top of the crease, and the players would come down and shoot off the wing. And I'd say, listen, you can't move. Just keep your stick on the ice, your glove open, and stand there. You can't move. And they would, the people would miss the net more often. It would hit them. They didn't have to go down. They didn't do anything. And it was just to make them think a little differently. But I think what's happened is somebody's told this person, take away the lower part of the net and do it before he shoots. And so it's interesting. And I think what could be great as another podcast or webinar would be just the philosophy of the game from all of us here, because it's different generations. But what Warren did great was he picked from every generation, old, current, and it hasn't even been developed yet. And he utilized that person's strengths and he made them better.
Another thing we talked a lot about when we were having our pre-chats was, the support system that we all are for one another. And I think this is a really interesting topic, specifically to Jen and Steve Cash, with, there aren't many Sled goalie coaches out there right now. And so when we were talking to you two, you guys are basically your goalie coach for one another. Explain that relationship and how you help each other get better every day.
Yeah, so I'll just give you a little background about how long me and Jen have known each other. So I've been on the team since 2005, and Jen joined the team 10, 11. Was the year you made 11 was the year you made it, correct, Jen? Okay. So yeah, we've known each other for a decade, and not just that, we've played alongside each other for a decade. And it is a very unique dynamic having, if you want to call it the starter backup relationship. We don't necessarily go with that because me and Jen lean on each other for a lot of different things. So just because I'm starting a majority of the games doesn't mean that Jen has less of a hand in leading up to that moment. So there's a lot of interchange between me and him. And honestly, there's more pressure in practice when we do scrimmages than a game, I would say, because while I want to compete with Jen, I don't want to beat him. Like, we're brothers when it comes down at the end of the day. So when we're out there on the ice competing against each other, like, you want nothing but success for him, and I know he has the same thing for me. And so you have to build that relationship. And when we talked on Wednesday, Nicole brought up a good point about talking to your backup or the other goalie about different plays. And when you go back to the locker room after letting a goal in or a bad play, the last thing you want is, the other goalie in the room thinking that he's better than you and he could have made that stop. So we take a lot of pride in making ourselves better and lifting ourselves up. And, our Coach Hoff tells us one thing that me and Jen really bring to the practice rink every day is, he says, you don't rise to the level of your competition, you fall to the level of your training. And so when me and Jen look at each other at the other end of the ice, we know that we're not only trying to make ourselves better, we're trying to make our teammates better. So like I said, there's a lot of interchange between me and him. We're talking about, where there's some holes in not just our game, but how can the team get better? And I can honestly tell you that while, you know, playing a lot of the games and getting a lot of the playing time can seem stressful, Jim's job is one that really never stops on the team.
And just to follow up on that too, as well, I know Steve for 10 some years now, like you mentioned, and I think just first year being on the team, the first couple seasons was really just, you know, just hearing about Steve Cash, his name, and how he shut everybody out in Vancouver and all these things. So it was definitely a big shoe to fill for the person that I made a team for, which is Michael Blayback, another great goaltender in our sled hockey world. So that being said, it was really for me to figure out how can I get how can I be better for my teammates, and then just watching Steve the first few seasons, I just knew he was playing at a different level, you know. And I remember even Coach Sauer, which is Coach Sauer we played for throughout from 2014 and on until 2016. He told me one day, he pulled me aside. He was like, but he's like, I'd love to play you more, but Steve is just on another different level. And goaltender is a position that you get better as it gets better as you get older, become older. And then I was like, okay, gotcha. And then I was still young. I was still trying to learn the game and everything else. And it makes sense as the season goes, and really it's just to not only understand what I can do, be better, watching him too, but at the same time knowing that, hey, just these practices, like you said, or even in the club, when we play for our club team back home and we're in the same league and we play against each other, it's just that competitiveness that we do, that we always bring for each other. And we know that whatever it is, it's gonna, whoever's gonna be in front of net, that we know that we have done everything we can to be at that level or to be ready to play for a game, you know. So yeah.
Awesome. Another thing with this whole support system and team, Nicole, from my time spent with the women's national team and just getting to know that group, you have two, pieces of reputation that I'm constantly hearing. Is one, that you're an excellent goalie, and then two, that you are like the best teammate, and everyone just speaks volumes about your ability to support your team. Do you mind talking about the roles on teams and that support system, not only for goalies, but just for goalies within a team?
Yeah, I mean, our position, it's one of those things where there's 2 or 3 goalies on a team, but only one can play at a time. And it's obviously a little different than the forwards and the D. And so I think that's what Maddie Riggs and I do really well is, we compete against each other. We go so hard in practice. We want to make each other better, but we're the first people to jump up and down in the air. If somebody's making a save or, a flashes a glove save, nobody's cheering. We're like, hey, you guys all missed that. Do you see what Maddie did there? Yeah. Okay. Just checking. But, so I think that's one of the biggest things for goaltenders to understand is, even though you're kind of out there, feels like on an island sometimes, across this country, across the world, there's so many goalies that know exactly what you're going through. And I think having that open communication with your goalie partners is huge. You've got to be able to, come in between periods and then be able to say like, oh, like, how did you see this play, or what did you see, or different things like that. And just kind of understand, what whoever's playing needs from you to be supportive. Like, I know sometimes we come in the locker room and Maddie would just tell me whatever she was seeing out there. And I just mostly listened. Like, I wasn't giving her any advice or trying to get in her head, just kind of like, yeah, you're right. Oh, well, it's behind you now. Got to move on. Just little things like that, I think, is so huge. And, with social media and things today too, there are so many different ways to connect with different goaltenders and pick their brains about different things, and coaches as well. So I think that's huge.
That's really fun that we get to share this with how many goalies, from across the country, that get to watch and hear from us. That just wouldn't have been possible in the past. Technology does allow for us all to really become the goalie nation that we all love. Another big part of goaltending is the mindset and the pressure. And that's why it's so great to have the support system of one another. But I wouldn't mind touching on, Jim, the onslaught of the Russian attack. There's so many clips of just like a myriad of shots and then a bit of a rest. And Steve, you had that legendary penalty shot in the 2010 Olympics, and then Maddie, the shootout against Canada. Those are 3 just critical moments in those gold medal runs. And I wouldn't mind if each of you could just speak to the mindset during those games and through that pressure and what allowed you to be so successful with that much pressure to deal with. Jim, would you like to start?
Sure. Well, I thought playing against the Russians was like playing, like one game would be like playing against 3 games against another team. And so I broke down the game into 3, 4, 5-minute periods. And then I focused on the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes as momentum. And so I was really able to, raise a focus for 30 minutes of the game. But after every period, I would get totally undressed. And that was a concept that I had, that I was starting another game. And so to be able to concentrate at that level and try to do it for 60 minutes was really hard. So I figured out a way that helped me anyway, focus. And then, I'm pretty sure in the Olympics, I don't think I let a goal in the 3rd period. And so that became a really important part of the focus and became a goal. So I really think the game starts with keeping your team ready as they get used to the speed of the game. And so if you can not give up a goal after your team scores a goal, that's really important. And if you can make sure that you don't lose momentum by giving up a late goal. But I thought it was a way to help me focus. And I really enjoyed playing in big games. And so each one of them was prepared a little differently. But that in that particular game, that was the strategy.
That's interesting. We had Scott Clemmensen, who's the Albany and the New Jersey development coach, and he spoke similarly to breaking the game into 5-minute segments a couple weeks ago, and how those 5-minute games really helped him and other goalies that he coaches can kind of compartmentalize the game so you don't feel the stress of a full 60 minutes. You just win your 5-minute segments and all of a sudden the game's over. It's pretty neat to see that used through different eras.
Yeah, and Steve, you are what you practice. So if you're mentally focusing on not giving up a goal, and that goes back to the stats and how you look at stats. To me, I always look at, I don't want to see the baseball player hits a home run when they're winning 10-0. I want to see a guy that hits a home run when they're losing or ties a game or puts them ahead. And I think all the goalies would say that your team gets used to a rhythm. When I played, if they could score 4 goals, we won a lot of those games. And back then, giving up 3 was pretty good.
Steve, I know you've had many big moments in your 3 Olympic golds, but the 2010 penalty shot is one that I think of often. Do you mind talking about your mindset going into that penalty shot and just maybe even highlight some others that I may be missing?
Well, Jim pretty much said everything I was going to. No, I'm just kidding. All the points he made is, still points that I don't even think about or didn't think about. So, but he made a really good point in that you are, how you practice. And so that's true. It doesn't matter what situation you are. You want to make sure you're doing everything you are, get yourself mentally prepared for a situation like a penalty shot and the gold medal game at the Paralympics. And so just to lay out the setting, it was a 1-0 game in the 2nd period. And the Japanese captain, he had a breakaway, and our captain, I guess he didn't think I was getting enough action, so he decided to haul him down from behind and award him a penalty shot. And so the first thing that kind of was running through my head was, is he nervous? Is he as nervous as I am in this situation? What's going through his head before he even touches the puck? And then when he picks it up, you kind of that's when I'm trying to get a good read for him, what might be going through his mind. Is he favoring the right hand more than he is the left hand as far as stick handling goes? But then when he starts coming down, I can remember thinking back, and this is a lot of situations, high pressure situations that I try to think back to. When I first started on the team, we had a goalie coach named Marty Wakeland, and he had never knew sled hockey, but never heard about it. But he was going to try to instill his wisdom on us, even though he's never seen the sport before. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know this guy. I don't know what he can do for me. But a big takeaway that I got from him that season, what we would do at the end of each practice is he would shoot 10 pucks at me. And before he shot them, he would ask me, how many are you going to stop? And the only acceptable answer was 10. And, you know, whether or not I let in a couple, the next day was to stop 10 out of 10. And so I bring that mentality to all of my play, no matter if it's a penalty shot in a gold medal game or a club game in the middle of the season. And I think that's a really good tool. Is you don't look at it as, you know, how monumentous this situation is. It's what are you going to do to ensure that you did your job? And I think a lot of that starts with the preparation and the training. And so when he came down, the big thing is not making the first move. And it's even more key in sled hockey. Just like in stand-up, the shooter's waiting for the goalie to move their hands or their legs. In sled hockey, they're doing the same thing. You know, he's waiting for me to move my hands, put my hands down to move, or, you know, waiting for me to go back or forth. And so just wait, don't make the first move. And I knew as long as I kept my training in mind and kept that in the back of my mind, that I would be all right.
And I think it's such a great topic. We were talking about this too, because I know just 2 days ago, you know, Jim kind of mentioned it with the group about like mental aspect of the game is not something that hasn't been touched, or it's just not as focused, or not people are mentioning about and talking about it besides everything else. And you know, just coming back from just coming from a military background, I kind of, and just what you guys just said too, like the way I broke it down is just like different games, right? It's going to be mentally prepared differently. So it's just like a shot group where, you know, when we had to qualify basic training and you had to zero in your shots, you know, and then you have to be hitting center mass. But as you get more elite, you know, these guys we call special forces, you know, whatnot. Those, you know, your shot groups got to be even tighter. You know what I mean? It's got to be dime, you know, and I think that's just the way I always kind of process is like, hey, bigger games, championship games, or things like that. Like your focus has got to even be more dialed in like that. So that's super awesome. Yeah.
And I think you're the only guy in the quote or on the call that can do quotes when saying special forces. I wouldn't even want to arm wrestle one of those guys.
Oh, I know. They'll kill me in my sleep.
And so, Maddie, now going to you. Probably some similarities in Steve's case with it being, you know, not wanting to make the first move, but, you know, you think back to February 2017, you're in college at Duluth. February 2018, you're going to an Olympic shootout for the gold medal against Canada, right? And talk us through the ebbs and flows of a shootout even. What was going through your mind? If we score, you know, now you got to defend the lead. If they score and we're down, you got to stop it or we can't catch up. You know, how do you play through those situations?
Yeah, definitely when I imagined the gold medal game, a shootout wasn't the first thing to come to mind. But like Steve said, and Jim touched on earlier, it's all about not making the first move and kind of reacting in that final moment to their move. And I think it all started at the end of overtime. It was a 4-on-3. We were killing off a penalty, and it was, I mean, a 4-on-3 is a pretty high quality scoring chance in the pressure moment like that. And so we were coming off a lot of confidence, killing that off and going into the shootout. I couldn't imagine the players who didn't shoot were just around the bench. It was kind of out of their control. And I knew I had to step up big in the moment. And so I just went into it with a calm, confident mindset and just fed off the energy from my teammates on the bench and just took it round by round, pretty much. The girl who ended up shooting in the 6th round, it was pretty back and forth, but the girl who shot in the 6th round, that's what it came down to. I had to stop it and we would win. She ended up scoring on me in the 2nd round prior. And so it was important to have like thinking about her earlier move in the back of my mind, but really in that moment, I was just expecting the unexpected, focused on the shot at hand, feeding off the energy of my teammates and just like knowing if it's one more stop and we have gold. So, I mean, it was a really exciting moment. I love shootouts, so it was really fun that it came down to that, but just feeling, I think being calm was definitely the most important thing and not looking too far ahead.
And I also have to throw in there, we kind of mentioned this before, but when the 4-on-3, Maddie had like the most like underrated save. Like it was incredible. It was a 4-on-3 backdoor save that she made with her paddle, like absolute desperation save that just, you know, speaks to her athletic ability and, you know, just shows that, you know, she'll do anything to stop the puck. And so that's what took us into overtime. So huge save.
And thank you. And puck luck might have been on our side. So we had it in the bank.
You know, I think another thing, Maddie, that's like completely underrated about your game is thinking back to that shootout. You were kind of, before the shootout started, you're leaning up against the bench, kind of waiting. And I know this is like Kelly Panic's favorite story, but you were just kind of leaning over there and Kelly leans over the boards. Hey, Maddie, you want to talk? And you just turn around and go, about what? And, you know, that laid back, like the moment was never too big for you. And I think like that just speaks to, you know, why you're able to play so well in those high pressure situations.
Thanks.
A lot about mindset. I like it. Speaking to that, Steve Cash, I know you had a chance to speak to Glenn Hall, who his nickname is Mr. Goalie. I mean, that's the coolest nickname in the world. And he's one that's credited with starting the butterfly. Do you mind sharing with the group your talk with Glenn and what that means for kind of the future of goaltending and sled goaltending?
Yeah, I think Jim said it best in trying to grow the position as a whole instead of looking out for, you know, what's going to make a goalie coach successful for himself. We're looking out what's going to make someone else successful. And so it was a ceremony for a St. Louis, I think, Amateur Sports Hall of Fame dinner, and he was getting inducted. I was receiving an award, and I was able to catch him backstage, and just, you know, I thought I was going to pick his brain a little bit about the position and, you know, how it was not wearing a helmet most of his career, and instead it turned into questions about sled hockey, and, you know, great, like more than willing to answer questions about that. And basically he was trying to paint an image, and he said, so when you're sitting there, your head is basically in the middle of the net. I'm like, well, yeah, I guess you put it that way. Sure. He goes, you have to be a different level of crazy to get into that position and want to do something like that. And you know, like, you can't tell Glenn Hall that he's wrong. You know, he did play most of his career without a helmet, though, you know. So it was kind of like the pot calling the tea kettle black, but just something I'll remember.
And that's one of the coolest things about this call, even, is, you know, we're all goaltenders. Doesn't matter what era we played in. It doesn't matter if we're sitting in a sled, you know, how long our hair is. We all get that same pressure and success and rush and butterflies when you're standing between those posts, when you're standing in that crease. And I think that's just something that everybody on this call and all the viewers that play in that can resonate with. And I think another thing that we really want to touch on is the future of this game. Like, where is this position going? Where is, you know, this game going? And specific with sled, I know that Jen and Steve, you two have been a part of growing this game. Where do you think that sled goaltending is going to move to?
Oh, you want to start? Me? Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Just since I first started in the sport, basically me and Jen were trying to set on a journey to try to coach more sled goalies across the country. And we're starting this with you, Steve. Thankfully, we got your support on it. But, you know, our vision for it now is to get more goalies that are at the national level that can actually make it to the Paralympics. And what we want to do is leave our position in a good spot when we leave the team for other people to fill in and keep the success going. But from what I've seen in the past, when I first started in the sport, you know, we've got 10 times the participation. We have 70 teams that come to nationals each year and compete. And I know that number is going to continue to grow. But what me and Jen want to do is we want to be able to fill each team with a goalie who, you know, is capable of, you know, playing in each and every game, because unfortunately right now it's you know, the person with a more severe disability, they get put in net, and, you know, whether or not they want to do that, they're expected to stop the puck. So we want to get it to where we have, whether you're interested or not, you were interested or not in being a goaltender, we want to make you interested. And so we're trying to harp on why it's so great to be a goaltender and why me and Jim have had such a great time over the last 10 years playing together. And we want to pass on the torch to the next person who wants to win that gold medal, because when I grew up, it was watching the Richters and watching Van Beesbrook and watching highlights of Jim Craig. And that's what made me want to become a goalie. And like, would I have ever thought that I'm on a webinar with Jim Craig? No, never. But here I am. So it's just so cool. And why would me and Jen not want to share that with people who may not get the opportunity otherwise?
Yeah. And just to follow up on that too, this was something in the talk a few seasons back, but with me and Money Steve. But the thing was, like, we were still playing, we were athletes and all that. So we were more focused on training to get better, and then just to and then our guys are like coming out with different moves and styles of shooting in a way, and we're just trying to like, how can we stop that now? But it's always like something that we always want to do and then it was not really until a spark, right? I would say, and I think Steve knows what I'm talking about here. About 2 seasons ago or so, we were up in Canada playing a tournament there, and Van Beesbrook was there. He's the Mr. Van Beesbrook. Sorry if I can't pronounce his name right. English is my second language. So he pretty much talked to us about the Sled and the program, and he was up there to scout the World Juniors. Yes, and then and then we were goalies and we're talking, and then the next thing you know, he was like, hey, it's up to you guys. He looked at us too and said, to build a legacy or start something where you may pave the way for so many other kids and with players with disabilities to want to play in this position. And so we kind of wanted to do that. And then back in October of last year or so, we kind of started taking notes and stuff. And next thing you know, one way leads to another. This quarantine thing happened, and our Coach Hoff connected with Tommy over here. And we kind of, and then Dave was there at the camp last season. So everything kind of just connected. And I'm just so glad that we're able to really get this thing started. And again, just like Steve says, him and I, we kind of like either helped each other, coach each other, getting a lot of feedback. So we have a lot of these tools and materials and everything that we have in our head, and just kind of write it down and just got to be able to find a good structure for it too as well. So I'm, in a way, like I told Stevie earlier, just like, I can't believe we're, having a great, a Zoom with the greatest of all time, but also, with Maddie, Alex, Nicole, like what they done. And we watched them too. We followed them as well, prior to Pyeongchang and then their games. And then just to see them after, to celebrate a little bit with them after at the White House visit, I think it was just like super awesome. I'm glad that we were able to circle back.
Cool. It's been a lot of fun working with you two on the evolution of the Sled goaltending game. I'm really excited to see where we take this. With the women's game specific, I think there's one thing that we need to really touch on for all of our female goalies out there, and it's some of the challenges that you face while you are coming through the ranks, specifically when you're playing boys hockey for the majority of your youth hockey career. And then that day comes when you start to play with the girls, whether it's in college or with the senior team. Alex, you were the first and I think only female drafted in the USHL, which is a really cool honor. And I know you spent majority of your playing career at youth hockey level with boys. Do you mind talking about that transition and some of the pressures you may have faced or current goalies currently face that they must play girls hockey or back and forth on that?
Yeah, it was a totally different time back then. I started playing hockey, and it was right around the time that the 98 women had won gold, and it was the first ever time that they were in the Olympics. And so from that point forward, that's what I knew I wanted to do, not really understanding the magnitude of it. But I was playing boys hockey, and I didn't really know that there was even a girls option. That's just what I did. And at the time I knew, parents would be like, well, you can be like the girl who's a couple years older than you. And I was like, well, who's that? And they're like, Brianna Decker. So we grew up in the same organization. We played boys hockey together. And so through that whole time, I only played a little bit of part-time girls. And I always had a really hard time. I'd be playing AAA boys hockey, and then I'd have to go to central districts and, these tryouts to get to development camps. And I remember always struggling in those tryouts just because it was such an adjustment for me. I still deal with that adjustment, and was always fun. I was on Taylor's team a couple of times, Jim, at some development camps. So I got to know her growing up. And so yeah, it was just, you know, those things that were kind of difficult just because, you know, you go from playing with guys who are 6 feet tall to all of a sudden being like, oh, I can just look over this girl's shoulder here. And so just a lot different. And my first time with girls was going to the University of Wisconsin. That was first full time. And it was definitely an adjustment, but it was a fun adjustment, you know, being in the locker room and having that atmosphere where, you know, people are having fun, dancing around, and it was a lot more chill in the locker room and stuff. And I think we all still kind of face it where, you know, if we're not, you know, Maddie's lucky, she's still in college and just graduated, but you know, Nick and I, we deal with, you know, goalie coaches a lot, and it's men shooting on us or guys shooting on us. And so for me, I always find that it's difficult going to like an August camp, because in the summers I usually train in Madison. I'll be, you know, skating with the pros, and so, you know, I get used to that, and all of a sudden I go to August camp and it's just an adjustment for you know, just releases. And it's not saying one's better than the other, it's just a completely different game, and the way that the puck's coming off the blade, and you know, kind of the speed of it, and it's just kind of making sure that you're able to take a breath and calm down when you need to, and not kind of overdo it and overdo the movements. And I think, yeah, that's the biggest thing, is just letting the puck come to you.
And I think it's really important that all of the coaches and evaluators that are listening and watching the call today understand that, because I have seen many times that we have some of our female athletes that play boys hockey and then go to some of these select tryouts and they don't fare very well. And a lot of the feedback I get from coaches is, who cares? Their job's to stop the puck. It's just stop the puck. And there's really no sympathy at all for the fact that it is very different when the release is different and the play is a little different. And Nicole, you know, I know Alex had mentioned that you were in similar situations with your summer training and working with your private goalie coach and such. What are some strategies that you've deployed to help, you know, slow down that learning curve, I guess, when you transitioned it back to the team after a little bit of a break?
Yeah, I think kind of like Alex said, with the situation where we're in, it is a lot of times us working with goalie coaches as opposed to a lot of game-like scenarios. So I think the biggest thing is we try to go back and forth and figure out, you know, timing on things in terms of, you know, you get a lot of stationary shooting at goalie sessions depending on who's shooting at you. So kind of trying to figure out timing and things like that. But at the same time, it's kind of, you know, we'll have conversations if we've got some of the pro guys out there shooting. We're like, hey, this is what we're working on. I don't need you to come down and just absolutely zip it past her because we know you can do that. Let's, you know, we're working with her right now. Let's, you know, try and work through that together, and just kind of having that open communication with shooters, I think, is really helpful. And, you know, finding shooters that are willing to, okay, yeah, I'll focus on this for you. And then, you know, you can have your breakaways later and things like that. So I think a lot of it is just communication and, you know, not just with who you're on the ice with, but then like, you know, hey, Alex, like, what are you guys doing? Like, how are you guys, you know, going back and forth with this and trying to strategize with each other, I think is huge.
That actually made me think of Brian coming out and shooting on us. So we have Brian Papier. He's one of our assistant coaches on the national team, so NHL guy. And last year at Worlds, Steve was on the team, or he was our goalie coach. And so I was starting that night and Brian didn't realize it. And he's coming down. He's like, all right, how many are you going to stop here? And he lines up 10 pucks, same thing, right on the hash marks. And he starts ripping slap shots at me. And I'm like, all right, bring it. Like, that's fine. So we're having this major competition. Like, it's a pregame skate. I probably stayed out for like an extra 30 minutes. He comes up to me before the game and he's like, I had no idea you were playing tonight. Why was I shooting those pucks on you this morning? I'm like, I was honestly having a blast. Like, it's totally fine. And but that's just Brian becoming like a little kid when he's out there shooting on us and stuff. And so, I mean, it is fun to have that competition. And I think that's what's kind of gotten us all to the next level too, is that we've had to compete for our spots. And, you know, we've always been challenged with playing boys hockey. I know Maddie played high school boys too. And we've always had to, you know, push ourselves and prove that we belong and we can hang with the guys. And so I think that's kind of helped us a lot along the way as well.
And to add to that story, I can say from my perspective, it was, you know, my first year working with the team. I'm at the other end of the rink in Finland working with the other goalie, and I'm looking down and our starting goalie is getting one-timers from 5 feet away from her, like in her face, off her shoulder, off the crossbar. And I'm going, Alex is a psycho. I can't believe this is like what she wants for her pregame warm-up in the World Championships. And after I go down to the locker room after practice, I was like, is that like your ritual? Is that the thing you do before big games? And she's like, no, that's what they wanted to do. So we just did it. And then sure enough, you have a shutout. So I think maybe we need to throw out that whole mindset that you have to have the perfect pregame skate or the for a good game that night.
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree.
And another cool thing that I would like to highlight with the group is the level of patience that you three have. And I know that, you know, watching a lot of men's hockey growing up in that world and then transitioning to, you know, the worlds of the women's team, there's so many times that you always think they're going to shoot the puck because typically in the men's game, it's fire it from the blue line, fire it from the point, you know, fire it from the top of the circles. And it'd be like fake shot, backdoor pass. And then you'd think, well, they're going to one-time that for sure. And then it would be across the crease to another backdoor play. And I'm like, holy smokes, I would have butterfly and bit on all three of those situations. Is there some challenges with patience, do you find, or is it mostly the release when you're transitioning from summer hockey to then the team again?
I think one thing that the three of us can speak on is during the Olympic year, we faced a lot of 5-on-0 warm-up shots. So I think the three of us got pretty comfortable with working on that and working on our patience. But you guys can speak on that too.
Oh my gosh, I was gonna ask. It's like, would you guys agree that for everyone out here, that 5-on-0 is like our favorite drills of the whole wide world?
Yeah. Feeling good, coach. Let's go.
5-on-0, get out there. You know, we're like, you know,
all practice.
Oh man,
please.
Oh, nice one.
No, I was just gonna jump in and say, then the transition from the national team level back to the college level, similar to what I faced with going from boys high school to girls college, actually was just over anticipating plays because the pace is naturally a little bit faster, a little bit more higher percentage plays, and I was noticing I was getting just doing too much and I was being exposed in that sense. And I learned that less is more. And I'm still continuing to work on that to this day, is just to play more controlled. And I think that's helped me at the college level, and then more easy of a transition when I go back to the national team level.
So awesome.
I have a funny story about poor Steve. When I used to play, I never in warm-ups cared if I stopped the puck. I just didn't want to get hurt, right? And so in warm-ups, it might be 30 minutes long. And, you know, I'd go out, I'd get in there about 5 minutes and then I'd leave. I'd go in the locker room and Steve would be out there facing the whole warm-up. I mean, there was no break for him. He'd be out there like 20, 25 minutes and they're just slapping him away. And I remember our coach at Boston University, Jack Parker, you know, he'd go out and watch warm-ups and he'd come in and he goes, Jimmy, you were terrible in warm-ups. I go, Coach, if I'm not getting ready, if I'm not ready before the practice starts, I think you're in trouble, right? I'm just trying not to get hurt. So Steve, how many warm-ups? You played a whole game in warm-ups.
Hey, you know what? I mean, I had a lot of fun with it. It was a lot of fun to stop those guys. And whether it's warm-ups, whether it's 5-on-0, there's nothing better than you're out there 5-on-0 and nobody can score. I mean, how fun is that? That is so cool. But, you know, Jimmy, I mean, that's where I got the towel around the neck thing, right? I'd be sweating like a dog going back in the locker room, and then you go sit on the bench and freeze. So I had to keep myself warm.
And we spoke to that a lot as a group when we were doing the prep for today, is, you know, how cool is it? You know, that's why we all play this position. That's why we love this game in this position, because you do have the chance to stop the five in front. You do have the chance to steal the show. You know, that open net, you dive, you catch the puck, and all the fans in the crowd assumed it went in, and it's just silent. There's no better feeling in all of sport than being able to shut up the entire arena because you were in the crease and you made the play. It's pretty cool. Now, I'd like to open up the questions for the crowd. I know we've had a lot populating throughout, and I'd like to start with Jim and Steve, and just a little backstory, because this is one of the coaches that works for us in Northern California. Billy Durrett, awesome coach, loves old school hockey. When he comes on the ice, he doesn't wear any equipment that wasn't made prior to 1970. His skates, his helmet, his goal pads. He still plays men's league, and he only wears the old horsehair gear. And I just thought that was a great lead up to his question. He said, Steve and Jim, I know that you're more than the 1980 Olympic goalies, but I was 6 years old at the time, and the feeling and love of hockey watching those games have never left me. My question is, what's something about the stand-up style days that today's young goalies can still use in their game?
Jimmy, go ahead.
Well, you block passing lanes. They don't see things. I always knew that if a shooter could see a spot, they had a lot better chance of hitting a spot. And so a lot of our game was taking away time and space by standing up and working with your defenseman. People used to say it was a 2-on-1, and I used to always correct them and say, no, it's a 2-on-2. There's two of us. We just have to work together. And so I think standing up has a lot of merit. I think the more patient you are and you stand up, gives them more chance to screw up. And when you go down, it gives them a chance to, shoot. And then you have to hope that the gear works versus, I really think the game is a mental game.
No, I think I'd only add to that it's a lot less mechanical in a sense, right? When you think about it, you got a 4 foot by 6 foot net, and a puck is what, 1 inch by 3 inches. So there are 1,152 ways that puck can go in the net. And if you're standing there, you're blocking space. I mean, it's just applied geometry at some point. And you're patient, you wait, you take away the shooting lanes, take away the passing lanes. I actually think the more the game comes back to data analysis, you might see more some of these big guys especially standing up more instead of just dropping down on their knees all the time.
And Steve, you can set the shooter up too. You know what I mean? You can't set a shooter up by going down on your knees. You can give them a glove and take the glove away. There's a lot of technique. You can take away their strength by a lot of things. And if you study the game, if you have a left-handed shooter, they'll shoot across their body 85% of the time. So you don't have to guess. You can anticipate, and you get a lot faster. And so like I said before, I think what happened with this sport, it became a coach who wanted to make money and teach a style, and he had a pupil that did really well. So everybody out of insecurity went, and that's became the norm. And, as I was listening to everybody here, if you're talking to sled hockey, I'd be recruiting an engineer to help with the game, because it sounds like that's part of the game. So it's not even a hockey player. And I always was feeling that you can learn from anybody, and sometimes I just think what happens is people don't process, they just accept. And so it's always really kind of good to go out there and see what your strengths are and weaknesses. And I think sometime in your coaching, Steve, too, is you have so many seminars on this is what you do. I watched the goalie when he goes around net to get on one knee. I've seen so many bad goals that if Steve and I played and let those type of goals in, we would have been yanked. And these are like, how do they score from the goal line? Well, it's a style of play. So there's a lot of things that you could adapt and have them become your own. And I would encourage all the goalies out there to listen, learn, and lead, right? So take things that work for you and don't be robotic, and utilize whatever that skill set is and learn from any athlete or anybody. Right? And in sled hockey, you might be able to change the game by listening to an engineer.
We've got a fun question here. That's great advice.
Right. Touching on something Jimmy said. Have you ever noticed the shooter's eyes when you give them something and they look up and they see it, whether it's the glove area or a little bit one corner or another? I mean, their eyes like get the size of saucers, like, oh my God, there's where I'm going. And then they drop their head and they take the shot and you take it away. And it's like, oh my God, how do you ever stop that? And it's so much fun with that. Give it and take it away.
It's fantastic advice. And I know we have a lot of young goalies on here because we just have a question from Luke. Luke says, hi all, I'm a 12U goalie. And I wanted to know if Jim and Steve, were you nervous before your first game against Russia? And Maddie, how can I stay calm in shootouts? Maddie, let's have you start.
Something that I think really helped for me, like I said, just staying in the moment of that one round and not looking too far ahead and getting in your own head in that way, and focusing just in on one thing. If it's on your shot, on your player who is shooting, and just staying in the moment. And positive self-talk is huge, I think, in shootouts as well. Like if you get scored on, know well, it depends on where you are in the round, but know that you'll get another shot at it and you can lift your team up, but don't think too far ahead would be my main advice, and just stay focused on the one thing at hand.
Awesome. And Steve and Jim, were you guys nervous before playing Russia in 1980?
Jimmy, go ahead.
Well, first of all, you should be nervous before you play any game, but I was a visualization goalie. So my nervousness was a day or two before, and never nervous the day of a game. I was prepared. So there's a total difference. I always visually saw the game, played the game, and I always visualized being successful. I never visualized negative. And so I was miserable, and nobody in my family would want to be around me a day or two before the game, but I was pretty happy-go-lucky the day of games. I was ready.
And Steve, how was that for you? Because I know that I spent a majority of my career on the bench, and then as parents, you talk about it too. When you have less control, I guess, over the game, sometimes you're even more nervous and you're more stressed, and even as a coach.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've always contended it was the toughest time I ever did, right? Because we're all, I mentioned this the other day, we're all wired to play. And now you don't get a chance to play. But I think that kind of again, underscoring the difference mindset and skill-wise between Jim and us, I was scared to death. I mean, I was actually more calm once I got on the ice after the national anthem than it was, it's showtime. And, but before that, I mean, yeah, it was tough, but not having any control. I mean, sitting there, and I think the concept of be ready, they say, okay, you be ready. Well, yeah, right. That's, I don't know. That can only go so far.
Yeah, and I definitely, I said, on the benches as well, where, watching Stevie do his thing, and then sometimes they'd be either whichever team would play or so, and then sometimes they will pull me in at their period, or just after second period intermission to go in, or just in the middle of the period. I mean, and I kind of looked at it more of like a closer perspective from a pitcher or baseball point of view, where you're like, the starting pitchers did their job, relieving pitchers, and now you're the closer. You got to close this game out, and I just like, gosh, I hope I won't blow this up, screw this up, or Money Steve or something. Yeah, so I definitely know what you're saying, Jen.
Yeah. That's it, man.
And touching on that a little bit, one thing I want to share with all the viewers that they didn't get a chance to hear is that during our prep for this, the amount of time that went into talking about Steve Janicek and how big of a role he played in the 1980 gold medal. And Jim just spoke at length about his value, and Steve did the same for Jen and with Nicole and Alex. I mean, for those goalies that are watching, you have such a big part of your team's success, whether you're on the ice or on the bench, and all those little things that we talked about as a group. We won't have the time to share today, but find value and then add value for your team, and it will make a difference. And every goalie that was in the net on the ice for those games, that was the first thing they wanted to talk about. It wasn't about the saves they made or the excitement of the game. It was, thank you, because without you, I wouldn't have been able to succeed the way that I was. And I think it's really important for all of our goalies to hear that. I think we've got time for one last question. This is a lot of fun. Jen, I want to direct this your way. Says, we've talked a lot about hockey today and the gold medal and the Olympics in general, but one thing I want to know, do you have any fun, cool stories from the Olympic Village and just that experience of being in the Olympics? And Jen, I know you shared one with us earlier that I think it'd be kind of fun for the group to hear.
Oh, is it me or is it Jim? Sorry.
Jen, sorry. Jen Lee.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. No, I think we just kind of mentioned it. We were just talking 2 days ago, and I think one thing for sure that stood out in my head, or that I was gonna remember for the rest of my life, besides winning the gold medals with my teammates and everything else, like Sochi in 2014. This was after the Olympics was over, and here we are. We're getting in and in process to register and all that stuff. So we got into the athletes village, and we noticed, a bunch of us noticed there was bicycles like parked, and the bike rack and all that stuff. And it turned out there were bicycles or bikes that was left by the men's and the women's Olympic hockey team, 2 weeks prior. So for those of you guys who doesn't know, Paralympic Games is 2 weeks after the Olympic Games. And why is that? Because we're always parallel. That's how I remember it, parallel. So that being said, it was pretty cool because they had stickers left too, or that was like, there were stickers on each bicycles, and me, Stevie, and Rico, and we'll just go out there and tour around. And I was either ride Jonathan Quick's bike, and then Stevie's on.
I got Carlson's,
David Backus, and all that. And we were just touring around the village. Everything's cool, and then the villagers, the volunteers were saying hi. And my leg just popped off, like riding an upright, and it just imagine like you're just riding and this thing just kind of like came loose, and then and they were just freaking out, and they had no idea what to do. Stevie's laughing his butt off, and like he's going back there like paddling to get my leg on because like I can't paddle anymore. So here I am like just literally like disabled, and he's just like, oh brother, Jen, you're so silly, so I just thought that's like, I'm sure there's always these moments, little things like that you just can't take away for sure. Yeah.
Keep in mind, Jen fell off the bike, but I was the shortest guy on the team riding the tallest bike. So
yeah.
We help each other out though. Of course I picked him up.
I know. Thank you. I was like, oh, Steve.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate everybody's time today. This has been really cool, and I hope this is what all the viewers were looking for, is just people that love the game and love the position, being able to talk hockey. Jen, do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I do have one question for the ladies here. So I don't doubt the movie will come out. I don't doubt the movies will be, there will be a movie about the 2018 women's team. So if you can choose, which actress would you guys want to play your characters or role and stuff?
Maddie?
I am not educated in the actress world, but I mean, who do I look like? I think I look like Ellen Page.
Who's Katniss Everdeen in
Hunger Games? Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
I've been told I look like her a little bit. Okay, that's my girl.
I can't say it. She'd be cool.
And she's brave, so I'll take that.
Right. Alex, Nicole?
Maddie, now I think you need to come up with one for me.
I think I go with Anna Kindred. She's got some good jokes.
Yeah, good selection.
Anyone else have any ideas?
Nope. That's it.
Let's end it on that.
On YouTube and on Zoom, we can put it in the chat.
Hey guys, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I hope everybody stays safe with this pandemic and we get back to work and keep giving back to this game. It's just an awesome game.
Thanks for being here. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh, can I have one of your hat? The hat you show or yeah.
Just go to the website and send me your email address and I'll get it out to you.
I forgot to ask about that. Thank you.
You get it. Hey, congratulations, everybody. Janny, great seeing you, bud.
Jimmy, great seeing you. Guys, it was really a pleasure to meet all of you and spend the time. Really impressed by the history that you guys have been able to put together. So awesome. I mean, remember meeting the guys from the 1960 team, the summer of 1980, and I just was remembering how old they were. I got to tell you, this has been a lot of fun being able to share some time with you guys.
Yeah.
This was fun. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hey, just want to thank everybody. Thanks, Steve, for putting this together. But really, this was great. Hopefully, we even get even more goalies with more sled, more women's, and more men's. I know, the 1980 team did a lot of good of getting goalies playing, and with you girls at 2018, and then the sled guys. I think we can even get more into our goalie nation. So thank you very much, Steve. Great job. And just want to wish everybody the best. And Jen, again, thanks for your service, big man. So much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you guys all. Thank you. Seriously.
Thanks, everybody.